From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Welcome to the National Book Festival and to the inaugural talk at the Food Pavilion. I am Joe Yonan. I'm food and dining editor at the Washington Post, which, as I hope you know, is a charter sponsor of the festival. And the festival has been hosted, this is its 15th year to be hosted by the Library of Congress, so welcome. I have the pleasure of introducing a couple of top-notch recipe testers, cooks, and know-it-alls. And I mean that as a compliment. Plenty of people have long known that if you want a recipe that absolutely works, you need a test kitchen. Particularly, you need America's Test Kitchen, which is parent company of Cooks Illustrated and Cooks Country magazines, and also the name of the single most watched cooking show on public television. With their latest book, the team is focusing on American regional recipes, the ones that are featured in Cooks Country magazine. That means you'll get recipes with titles like Green Bay Booyah, Bee Sting Cake, and Sweet Potato Sonker. Two members of the ATK team are here at the festival today to talk to you about the book, Bridget Lancaster and Brian Roof. Bridget is executive food editor for new media, television, and radio at America's Test Kitchen. She joined the Cooks team in 1998. She's an original cast member of both America's Test Kitchen and Cooks Country television shows, and she is a co-host for the America's Test Kitchen radio program. She's also lead instructor for the ATK Cooking School, and she helps develop and produce courses for the school. Brian Roof is a senior editor for Cooks Country and an on-screen test cook for America's Test Kitchen. He began working as a test cook for Cooks Illustrated in 2006 and has worked on various magazine, book, and website projects. With the two of them at the stage, this is your chance to ask the most difficult, obscure, arcane, technical culinary questions you can think of. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bridget Lancaster and Brian Roof.
Thank you. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. Brian, you want to say any hello to the folks here?
Good morning. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to giving a little slideshow for you guys today.
Yeah. So we're thrilled to be asked to present for you today. And I think this is the second year that the Culinary Arts Pavilion has been included in the lineup. So we love that that tradition is continuing. So thanks to the Book Festival. I think we're all here because, well, we love books. And more importantly, we love stories. So you may find that great story in a novel or a biography or sometimes even in a cookbook, hopefully our cookbooks. And I think the reason that people connect with cookbooks, I know people that don't cook at all, but they have a massive cookbook collection and they read them like they're novels. They always end up having the best kitchens too, those people that don't cook. I don't know why that is. But I think we connect with food and we each have our own food story. Now, the food story may be some sort of disaster, your bread didn't rise, your souffle collapsed, or maybe your husband forgot to take the blue cheese in the grocery bag out of the car and you didn't figure that out for a couple of weeks. But I think food plays such an important part in our lives. Every day we mark our days, we timestamp them with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if you work in the test kitchen, hourly eating. And we mark our occasions when we're wed, a new birth of a baby, Thanksgiving, lots of holidays. But I think also food can play a part in our own identity. So if I haven't talked too much already, I hope you indulge me in my individual food story. Those that watch the show or listen to the radio, you may know that Chris gives me a hard time for my love of pork. And it's a pretty serious addiction I have, love pork. But I didn't really realize how much that shaped my identity, although sometimes when I'm on the street, somebody will say, hey, you're that pork lady on TV. I've been called a lot worse. So when my youngest son was in nursery school, his class was asked to finish the sentence, I love my mom because. And this was for Mother's Day. So the kids answered the sentence, and the teacher scribed on a piece of paper, and then the kids would draw a picture that corresponded to their sentiment. All the moms were, yeah, you know where this is going. All the moms were called in the Friday before Mother's Day, so I show up, and I'm looking for my sons, and I see these beautiful sentiments. I love my mom because she reads me bedtime stories. I love my mom because she dances with me, and some of them were a little greedy. I love my mom because she buys me lots of Legos. And then I see a picture of a pig. And I'm thinking, please don't let that be me. But I knew it was me because it had a skirt on, and it had lipstick on. And you can put lipstick on a pig, by the way. So I walk over to it, and I see, I love my mom because she smells like ham. I wasn't sure how to take that. Of course, the other mothers were saying, you know, inching closer to me to see if I really smelled like ham. And then I asked my husband later that night, I told him about that, and I said, do I really smell like ham? And he said, yeah, you kind of do. So that's my own food story. I think we all have that little connection or big connection with food. And, you know, stories are part of what we do in America's Test Kitchen. I don't think a lot of you know, or hopefully a lot of you know, the work that goes behind each recipe, and each recipe forms its own story. So that's what we'd like to share with you, a little slideshow of our behind-the-scenes family photos of America's Test Kitchen. Yes. And how we shape the stories that go into our food. So roll them. Or do I roll them? Technology. All right, let's see here. You wanna?
Yeah, I can do this. Give me something to do today. Can you see, Bridget?
Yes, and we have this.
Oh, right.
We have our cheat sheet.
So this first slide is basically what you see when you watch the America's Test Kitchen TV show. It's Chris, usually standing in front of the cow, introducing some kind of cut of meat. There's cooks in the background developing recipes, and yes, those are live, real cooks developing real recipes during the show. Actually, there's some of them, there's restrictions to what they could be doing during the show. They can't make any noise, so no food processors, no blenders. So there's a lot of chopping, very quiet chopping.
Quiet chopping.
And one of the secrets nobody knows about is during TV, the 3 weeks that we shoot America's Test Kitchen is 26 episodes. We shoot in 3 weeks.
26 episodes in 3 weeks.
So it's a big production. A lot of the cooks, since they can't make any noise and they run out of stuff to do without food processors and blenders, they actually make Rice Krispie treats. There's a huge competition amongst the staff.
Some are very competitive about the Rice Krispie treats. He has been known to follow people out to their car at the end of the evening, trying to steal recipes, threatening people, you know, all that sorts of things.
Hey, it's not my fault. Two-time champ, but just saying. So that's the real behind the scenes.
That's right.
So this is what you see on TV, but this is really what the Test Kitchen looks like on a daily basis. It's splattered with sauce.
So this is not a scene from Dexter. This is our Test Kitchen tasting and testing director, and she has covered the entire kitchen with plastic sheeting because we are testing, at this moment, zipper lock storage bags. Mm-hmm. So they are filled with tomato sauce and then dropped off the side of the counter to see which ones broke open and which ones didn't. And you can see the best part of this picture is the people in the background. Because that just shows you, I mean, we do some crazy things, but this is really, really crazy. Lisa's a little bit crazy, our testings and tastings person, in a good way. She's, you know, tries everything. And so, you know, you can see the amazement, people taking pictures.
Yeah, even though we're in it every day, it's still, we still think it's a cool place to be. Yeah. All right. So a lot of people ask how we begin all of the recipe development process. And it all starts with a 5-recipe test. So what we do is we decide on the recipe. This one here happens to be pepper steak, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we will go to the library. We have a huge library. Do you know how many books we have in there? Like 1 million.
No, I'm not sure.
1 million.
We have one of the largest collections in the Northeast of cookbooks. I wish I knew the number, but I didn't absorb that information.
Just make that up.
Yeah, we'll just make it up.
So in our 1 million book library that we have in the front of the building. We'll go there, we'll look for recipes, we'll go online, we'll word of mouth, maybe your grandma's got a recipe, and we kind of bring them all together. And the key is that each one of the recipes should have some element that's kind of different from the other. So we'll cook these recipes side by side, all 5 of them. The test cooks and editors come through, and they're handed a tasting sheet, and it's a silent tasting. We all fill out the tasting sheet. And then at the end, we compile all the results and decide what elements of each recipe we like, and we build a working recipe. And from there, the working recipe gets broken down into all its variables and components, and we begin the whole testing process.
Yeah. So this is one of those testing variables here. I think we are testing the stew part of chicken pot pie. So everything is tested. The amount of salt, the type of meat that might be used, how to cut a carrot. Should it be diced? Should it be sliced? Should it be on the bias? Should it be a straight cut? Every variable is tested. And usually by the end of it, the easiest foods have at least 40 tests, sometimes 50 tests. We've had quite a few that have gone over 100 tests.
And they don't get published.
A couple have not been published because we haven't been able to make them work. So that is our mantra, recipes that work. And if we can't make them work, we don't send them out. By the end of the recipe testing, we don't want to see that food for a very, very long time.
And this is just another example of how thoroughly we test. Thermometers and all the meat. The ovens are filled with thermometers, and the ovens, we have 25 ovens.
That's right.
And over, I think it's close to 48 burners in the kitchen now.
Right.
And it's to support roughly 40 test cooks at any given time. And these ovens are calibrated once a month, just because we use them so often.
Yeah, and we also use those oven thermometers. A good tip is, know what your oven thermometer, not just what the digital readout is saying, but get at least one oven thermometer. Sometimes we put 2 oven thermometers inside the oven. And then you can really see how off your oven is.
The whole damn oven's filled with thermometers, so you try to put a tray in there, and you're knocking thermometers everywhere. So.
Roasted thermometer.
Right. So this is a kind of a good example. Like all of our recipes, and I think most recipes that are written today, have both a visual cue and a time. So we'll say cook until golden brown, 5 to 7 minutes, about 10 minutes, cook until softened. The one thing about any recipe is, it's a global tip here, is that you should always cook to the visual cue of the recipe. Because stoves and ovens, everything varies. The temperature of the kitchen.
Sure. The cut of meat, the size.
Yes, there's so many variables that we always include that visual cue. So that's what really the home cook should be going by. So it's not our fault.
So with this one, I believe, we develop theories. We are in constant conversation with each other. The book team, America's Test Kitchen, Cooks Illustrated, and Cooks Country all work in the same kitchen. So we don't just work in teams, we cross-pollinate with the other areas of the company. And then every week we get together in what's called an edit meeting, and we yell at each other for at least 1 hour.
Yes.
Having food theories, what went wrong, what went right, is it practical, is it impractical, and you're wired after an edit meeting, that's for sure. But we do this, and we're in constant conversation about what to do next, what happened, how to fix it, so that we can proceed until the recipe's done.
And then just because I know somebody's going to ask, yes, Chris is very opinionated, so.
That's why we love him.
This is just an example of some of the testing that we run in the kitchen. This is a broiler map test. So these 4 sheets of bread were placed into 4 separate ovens. Broiler was turned on. They were all left in there for the same amount of time. And this is the result.
Yeah.
So you can see this comes back to stoves, ovens, everything varies so much. So you always cook to the visual cue of the recipe.
Yeah, and we recommend that people do this at home. And that way you can see if you have a fast broiler, a slow broiler, an uneven broiler, you may need to turn food around a few times. Or if you're like me, I still have my 1950 stove with the broiler underneath and the drawer hinge is broken, so I have to lie down on the floor to see my food broil. I'm keeping it real. Luxury at work, not at home.
And we decided that we have no idea why Lon is cooking alone right there.
Yeah, we felt really sad when we saw this slide.
You can be sure, no, she's most likely working for a photo shoot. Lon is one of the people on Cooks Illustrated that orchestrates all the food for photo shoots. Photo shoots are going on constantly in the test kitchen. We've now actually added a whole photo team of another 6 people. So
That's right.
just because we have books, magazines, SIPs.
But we do tend to cook a recipe start to finish. We have a lot of interns that usually prep all those magic ingredients for us, and we walk in, it's like, oh, everything's prepared. But we always make sure that we go through the recipe from beginning to end, each cook that is responsible for that recipe. And that way we can say either, wow, that's a lot of work, which sometimes it's worth it. So a lot of work isn't necessarily a bad thing. And other times, we can just regulate whether it's easy and practical as well.
And all these cooks are responsible for keeping detailed testing logs, which we review every week at the edit meeting. So we'll go through them, and then you have to, copy the recipe each time, say what variables are there. So if there's a moment where the recipe goes awry, we can kind of trace it back to the last successful test. Again, this is, some of the teamwork here. This is actually not even a recipe that ended up in the magazine. It's just a kitchen note that ends up in Cooks Illustrated about making strudel dough. So,
yeah, we would probably never run a recipe on homemade strudel dough that you had to stretch out to 1/64 of an inch.
Takes 2 people to do.
Maybe
3
next
hours.
year, exactly.
Yeah. And so this will speak more towards Cook's Country, where we're doing now more of these old-fashioned American regional recipes. This here, you'll see we have a video to show you in a little bit, is frosted meatloaf.
Which sounds a little odd.
But it's completely logical once you eat it. You're just like...
Well, think meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and back in the 1950s, they put them together. They actually frosted. I mean, it's kind of a shepherd's pie with meatloaf underneath, if you think of it that way.
It's one of the best, most efficient ways to eat.
Yes, exactly. It's what you do anyway on the plate, right? You shovel the mashed potatoes onto the meatloaf.
All right. So here, this is a good example. We try all kinds of things in the kitchen. We would never ask a home cook to put a roasting pan on the stove, turn the burners on, and sear a chicken. It just is like very impractical. But we do it because we want to see, like, in an ideal situation, how good can we get this food?
Right.
And I know for a fact that the way we ended up is by preheating a sheet pan in the oven and then dropping the chicken onto it after it was already hot. But this is the type of steps we take, to get us there. Is it just as good? Yes.
And this is a great shot. This is Lon again, cooking alone.
You see why she has to cook alone.
Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Dangerous,
Exactly. Yes. No, you actually see somebody's head behind the flames there. So
that's because she made a mistake. She's actually on fire.
That's right. So this was for a recipe that Lon was developing. I believe it was a French pork stew.
Yes.
And one of the steps was flambéing brandy, or apple brandy to be specific. And where we found most recipes will tell you to add the alcohol to a warm pan off heat and then ignite it. That's the result. So after your hair's grown back and your eyebrows have grown back,
I have nothing to worry about.
we learned that it's best to flambe it at least in 2 stages. So you add a little bit of liquor and then you flambe it until it settles down, and then you add a bit more. Not only is it safer, a lot safer, you get about half the height of flames, but we found out serendipitously that more flavor compounds were developed by doing it twice. So it started as a safety precaution ended up in a much better tasting stew.
Mm-hmm. This, I would just say true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this recipe, we started out developing a recipe for jalapeno poppers that we would then put on the grill and smoke. And so Nick and I are here trying to, the jalapenos were half lengthwise, filled with the cheese mixture, and then we tried to wrap them with the bacon to keep it all from blowing apart on the grill. After a while, we did this for like 3 weeks and just found that it didn't work. Right. It wasn't consistent enough. It worked sometimes, but only when Nick did it. And it was just it's a dead giveaway that something's going on. So this is how a recipe goes from this to this. And you'll see in the cookbook here, the Cook's Country Eats Local book, that we have the same recipe, but we ended up cooking the bacon, chopping it up, mixing it into the cheese mixture, and we moved the whole operation into the oven instead.
Ah, yes.
This is a...
Nothing can stop us. We are the Mad Dog Test Kitchen. So when the rain comes down, the tents go up, and what you're seeing here is our beautiful back alley behind our test kitchen. And believe it or not, we shoot a lot of our exterior shots there for the television show. You can't see that little grotto area, but we are blessed to have neighbors that installed a beautiful fence and with lattice. And for one day, the little parking area back there gets faux grass, tables set up, beautiful arborvitaes. I wish it was palm trees and margaritas, but maybe another day. But nothing will stop us. So this is actually a very usual scene here, going into the test kitchen, and somebody's already out in the back alley grilling in the rain.
Yeah. This is my favorite part when somebody comes for a tour of the test kitchen. I love bringing them out there and saying, "Hi, right next to the dumpster."
That's right.
See how hard my job is?
That's right, yes.
And
actually, the first season of the television show, we had to work around the graffiti on the building. So we had to work our shots all around the graffiti, which you can see here. So this is, you might have heard Boston had a little bit of snow this past winter. It's not going to happen again. It really will not. I'm just keep telling myself that. And you can see it in the background where it's all been plowed. But this is Christy grilling in sub-zero temperatures, huddling close to the flames as close as she can. We grill nonstop, doesn't matter what temperature it is. And we also send these recipes, all of our recipes, but specifically grilling recipes that we do in the winter, we send them to people in warmer climates and have them also test them for us so we can get a range of time and temperature.
yeah, we develop recipes 6 to 8 months prior to publication.
That's right.
So that explains the winter grilling.
Precision, it's our thing. And this is, she is at sea level looking at the liquid in the measuring cup. Because if you look at it from top down, you're going to get an inaccurate reading, often over by a tablespoon, which usually doesn't matter, but in some cases it could matter. So this is what you will see. And if you see somebody looking top down while they're measuring, they get their hands smacked. So not really.
Lon sets them on fire.
Yes. That's why she cooks alone.
Again, this is actually Dan Souza. He's our science editor, also on the show. Again, this is just more of what we do. We actually host a part of the process of coming to work in America's Test Kitchen involves what we call a bench test. And you basically come in with your knives ready to cook, and we hand you 2 recipes. It's usually a sugar cookie recipe and a pan-roasted chicken recipe. And we pick those 2 recipes because they require heavy use of...
Careful reading of the recipe.
Yes. So you have to use a ruler, you have to measure and weigh everything, and it's part of the process of seeing if the test cook is able to follow recipes and then turn around and write their own recipes with that kind of attention to detail.
Now this is part of our testing of chef's knives, and the test was how many slices of the chef knife, how many times can you work it across the board until it became dull. And in order for this to be an accurate test, we had to have the same amount of pressure applied with each stroke. So bless her heart, she's got the cutting board on the bathroom scale, ensuring that we have the accurate and the same strokes. And actually our winning knife went over 5,000 strokes, and it was still sharp. And that is the Victorinox Fibrox knife.
She was in the kitchen for 3 days doing that.
Yep. Yeah, she didn't like us very much.
Again, this is Hannah. On a recent review of slow cookers, she wasn't planning on taking the slow cooker apart. It just so happened that we discovered that the heating element is on one side of the slow cookers usually. So in order to form an accurate opinion of which one was the best, she took them all apart and found out where the heating element was. And all this kind of led us to start using a foil collar on the inside of our slow cooker recipes
Yep.
just to kind of dampen the heat.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an insulation. We found that things like tomato sauce were burning on one side. So we realized, hey, that side's hotter. And it's usually the side away from the control panel for all of you that have slow cookers at home. So if you even just put a foil collar or a little layer of doubled up foil on that side, that'll help to even out your slow cooker. Makes it even more slow.
All right. Do you know what the name of this thing is?
No, so we were trying to figure out what this thing is, and we don't know what it's called. So we're going to call it the chicken probe. This is a piece of metal that is designed to conduct heat, and you place it inside of roasts, chickens, hopefully that's it, meat, and it's supposed to conduct heat to the center of the meat so it cooks more evenly. But what it actually does is it creates a lot of holes in meat for juices to run out. Poor Lon gets it, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does. This is great. These here are food carriers, correct?
Yeah. Insulated food carriers.
Insulated food carriers. So what Lauren did, she filled each with lasagna,
Yeah. Hot lasagna.
and then she drove around Boston for 3 hours.
That's right. And anybody who knows Boston streets, they were created by horse trails. So there's no straight roads in Boston, and really friendly drivers as well. So she was out there for a while, several hours, came back, and most of them did very well. Pleased to say that even despite the testing, did very well. We did a separate cake carrier testing one time, and we loaded people up with cake carriers and then put them on our subway system. And they had to get off and on the trains as if they were going to a party. And then we just told them that, no, we weren't really doing that test. It was just a joke. No.
This is the guy who washes a lot of the dishes in the test kitchen. Now, this is a scene from Cook's Country TV.
Yeah, so we always try to let you know what food works best in our recipe. So we'll have recommendations and shopping guides. We often will run all the different, and here you have the cow again, and we'll show you all the different cuts of meat. But it goes well beyond meat. We have buying guides for produce. We have different kinds of how to store eggs. We try to take that information that is most practical to you, and then when you go to the supermarket, you can know exactly what you're looking for, and the recipe success is more probable that way. Not always, but usually. Oh, this is great. This is one of my favorite testings.
tell
It
the
looks
story.
like they're meditating.
Now they're bending metal spoons in their minds.
That's right. They're trying to levitate that blue tape in the front. So,
We can go on for hours like this.
so we all, going back to how food shapes us, we all have these memories of certain ingredients from our childhood. Heinz ketchup is one of those things that a lot of us, when you have a blind tasting of ketchup, people will say, that's Heinz. I know it is. I know exactly what it tastes like. This is cheddar cheese. And about half of the test kitchen said white cheddar cheese is always superior to orange cheddar cheese, which set up the other argument. Orange cheddar cheese is way better. You all don't know what you're talking about. So in order for this to actually be a fair testing, we had to take the visual out of it. So this was a real blind testing. It's the same brand. And by the way, usually the orange comes from annatto, which is a natural ingredient. Same brand, same sharpness of cheddar, just one was yellow or white and one was orange. And once the blindfolds were on, you couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Oh, okay. This is Diane. She's like the godmother of the test kitchen.
Yeah, if you could wish for anybody to be your mom and cook for you every day, it's Diane.
She's been on Cook's Country since the beginning, so it's a little over 10 years now. And she's done all but probably 2 of the fried chicken recipes.
Yes, and that was because she was out for personal reasons.
Yeah.
She makes the most amazing food, not only to develop the food for our magazines and television shows, but she makes us breakfast in the morning.
Birthday breakfast. And
She goes home and she talks about this very complicated stew that she made after working 8 hours in the test kitchen. And when we go home, we're stuffed. They're like, we don't want to see food for a long time.
She's just making it to practice.
Yeah, so
while
she
watching
shows us
food
up.
TV.
Yes,
again.
exactly. And then, of course, some of us love to eat
Yeah, this
a
is
lot.
me getting fatter. Yeah, this is a constant scene in the test kitchen. Not only of me, but it's a lot of times it's me. Just flat out eating.
Yeah, Julia, who's on the television shows as well, and she heads up the book department, she and I calculated the calories one day many, many years ago. And we test a lot more since we did this. And in one day, and I'd say testing or tasting starts around 10 o'clock, and usually in the morning, usually it wraps up around 4 or 4:30. Within that day, it was close to 5,000 calories.
Easily. Yeah.
So we had to remember that they're called tastings and not feedings. But we do have lots of leftover food at the end of the day. It's something people will ask us, what do you do with the leftover food? And the joke is the really good food never makes it out of the test kitchen. All the cooks grab it, they put it in their containers, put their name on it. The food we call in marketing. And the food that nobody wants to claim we call in accounting.
But they're happy to have it.
They're very happy to have it. So, but all this is because we want to create recipes that work every single time. And that gives people the confidence at home, if they know why things happen in the kitchen and what to do about it, then you can take that and apply it to other food, and you can become a much better home cook yourself. And that's what we're all about. So
now we're going to introduce you to the Cross Country television show here.
this is our sizzle reel.
Just beyond the turnstiles of my memory, there's
I'll sing along. No.
living out this perfect mystery.
Just the ladies in the
Let's
house.
turn back the clock to World War II when a quarter of all farm production was being shipped overseas to the troops. So the federal government had a problem, which is how to make people happy with the fact they couldn't eat as much meat. Probably the most successful way to extend meat was meatloaf with mashed potatoes. So let's go into the test kitchen with Bridget and take our favorite recipe from the 1940s, frosted meatloaf, and update it for the 21st century.
So we're going to slice this instead of putting the brisket in one piece in the brine.
That's not
on the
meatloaf,
grill.
by the way.
We're going to slice this into 1.5-inch strips. Looks like a terrible experiment gone awry.
That's the Frankenstein.
You will be saying how beautiful these are at the end, I promise you. No competition, though. Not a competition.
Julia, everything with you is a competition.
I know, it's true.
And me, by the way.
Yeah. And someone taught me when I was young to use the sides of the plastic wrap to help you shape and form the dough. That looks pretty good.
You notice I'm done?
Yeah.
Just,
I said it wasn't a competition.
this is sweeter than this.
Yeah, and you have to be wondering, do I trust the information that he's given me?
Well, I don't trust you at all. I know I'm wrong.
You chose the winner, Chris, because you're overthinking it.
Oh, you had me going there.
So we had 8 different towels here. This one is a synthetic microfiber. And this one of our editors swears by this. This is a cotton diaper. It's not even a kitchen towel, it's a cotton
Clean,
diaper.
clean.
I'm going to show you how to do this. Have you ever done this before?
Does this mean I'm going to have to do some of this? I'm getting nervous.
It's fun. Be one with your food.
I am
That's what
one
I
with
always
my
say.
food. Well, eventually we all are one with our food.
We are.
I think I'm home. I think I'm home. How nice to look at you again.
Get another one, and I've got to skin all 6 of these while you stand and watch.
We're both doing the things we are best at. Jack's like a driving instructor that drives you off the cliff.
But I get out first.
I can't believe it myself. Oh, I've been living on my own for so long.
And we counted the number of scrub strokes that it took to get the, you're laughing at me, Chris, you're always laughing, but this is what it takes to test these products.
I'm glad I was busy that day. Takes a tough woman to make a tender donut, I always say. I'm pretty smart.
You're smart, you catch on.
I think I'm home. I think I'm home. How nice to look at you again.
I'm well coated.
Hi, nice to meet you. Just proves that your bark is better than your bite. Bridget.
That's right. And my bite is excellent.
I would have had a happy life if I had this as a child. Would have changed my whole life.
hungry.
Yeah. So that's the current season, correct?
Yeah, and this is Cook's Country, and our cookbook that we're featuring today is a Cook's Country cookbook. And Cook's Country takes a little bit of a different approach. We still have the same test kitchen testing that goes on, but we like to look at regional or historical aspects of our food. And so we like to say that Cook's Country, it's America's story that's told through food. And got a great shot here of shifty-eyed Brian.
So recently, I'd say in the last year and a half, I've been traveling around the country trying to hit up places that we hope other food magazines aren't going to hit up, before we get there. So we try to pick a little bit more obscure recipes and destinations. So, at the top, I generally have one of these faces every day that I'm out on the road when I'm eating off my third or fourth meal. Eating barbecue hash in South Carolina. In the bottom left there are the famous butter burgers of Milwaukee. And those are basically burgers that have been seared off, covered with stewed onions, and then slathered with about 3 tablespoons of butter.
Yeah. And it's butter with a little bit of meat.
During the development of this recipe in the kitchen, everybody would walk by and be like, oh man, there's no way. Ugh, it's disgusting. And somebody would eat it, and they'd be like, oh damn, that's so good. And they'd be gone in a heartbeat. And we're also trying to get into people's homes to, steal their
Legally,
soaps and everything like that, but to cook with them. So this lady, Elaine Kidlowski from Pittsburgh, invited us into her home to make pierogi, and she gave us her grandmother's recipe, and that was a big part of the recipe we developed.
So here's our Eats Local cookbook, and it's a lot of the recipes that Brian talked about. There's many others. Joe mentioned quite a few as well. And it's great because it really shows how varied we are as a nation when you start looking at the different regions, the regions of cooking. And as everybody's moving around the country even more, they're becoming a little bit more jumbled. But there's some really great old-fashioned, handed down by your great-great-grandma recipes in here as well.
And this is just a small cross-section of the way the book is broken down. Break it into specific regions, Appalachia in the south here, but then we have the West Coast,
right.
East Coast.
Yeah, so that's our presentation, but we'd love to take some questions, really simple ones.
Yeah. Get all the ones about Chris out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone, please.
Yes.
Yes.
I know of a dozen ways to cook bacon.
Yes.
Baking to boiling. Tell me your favorite method.
Let's see. My favorite method is baking. So I do, because I don't want to cook a few strips. So I don't want to be held in constraint by the size of my skillet. So I cook by the package. Bacon.
Bacon by the pound.
I've got 2 hungry boys at home, a husband, and a 150-pound dog. We're all eating bacon. So I cook
That's all she eats,
yeah. So bacon in a single layer on a rimmed baking sheet, 325 oven, 15-20 minutes. You don't need to flip it. You don't need to turn it. It comes out beautifully crispy every single time. How about you? Same way?
Same way, but I put it on a wire rack because I'm trying to watch my figure.
Next question.
You mentioned some of the lively regional names for some of the recipes at the start. I was wondering if you had a favorite name for a regional dish that you came across when you were developing this book.
Jeez.
The sonker that Joe mentioned is brilliant.
Yeah.
That originally came from Mount Airy, or North Carolina. They have a festival there, which is the original Mayberry. And sonker is like a deep dish pie/cobbler, and one of the most famous flavors is sweet potato. So you think of cobblers as apple or blueberry, not sweet potato. So I love the name sonker. Plus, that's how it feels after you've eaten it.
Yeah.
Very filling.
I think mine's also it's got to be Carolina chicken bog. It's basically they have contest for this in South Carolina, and there's a regional winner. And when one of our test cooks traveled down, he met with them, And it's basically a big pot of rice, chicken, and kielbasa sausage, heavily seasoned with black pepper. And it's like the most homey, rich, delicious thing you've ever had. And it's one of my favorite recipes in the book. So.
Yes, thank you. I like to watch the episodes on on Amazon Prime. Are there any? Do you know of any plans to extend the amount of seasons and also maybe get like a Netflix deal or something like that?
I would love that. Although I can't stand to watch the television shows.
I don't pay for cable anymore, so I'm just streaming.
So you're watching actually the current season? Is that all?
Or the past
yes, I
seasons
think
on,
like
yeah,
I think like 8 and 7 are like on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I don't know of any talks. We're on a need-to-know basis, and pretty much we need to know nothing. But I will definitely bring that up with the people who want to make more money. Yes, sir.
When you were doing your research on this Eating Local cookbook, did you find state fairs to be a source of like heirloom recipes or any creative insights?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Brian could probably speak to that a bit more.
Yeah, I've been to a few state fairs, and a lot of this, traveling to the state fairs is something that happened just after the book went to press. So those recipes will probably end up in the next issue of Eats Local. But yeah, I remember one state fair in Texas was just amazing. I went around and had something from each booth, so it was like 10 and 15 items that I was eating.
So he rolled
ending
out of
with
there.
a chocolate-covered pickle, which was the worst idea anybody's ever had. So.
I guess that's the hard part of the job?
Yeah, it's the hard part.
All right, and one last question.
Oh, but I had two.
Oh, okay.
First question, is it ever possible to go to the test kitchen and actually get to work with the chefs or take live, I know you do the online lessons, but to ever do hands-on stuff?
Well, Brian and I take checks. So
I prefer cash.
But cash, yes.
We'll meet behind the signage.
We do set up test kitchen tours. If you look at the front of our publications, our phone number, 617-232-1000, is our front office, and that is where they will help set up tours of the test kitchen. Usually to come in and work for a day, that there's a little bit of a safety issue. But we'd love to have you come and at the very least, take a tour.
Cool. Second question. So I have this problem because I've been subscribing and buying the books for years, and now, of course, there's the online membership. So I now have the Cooks Illustrated and Test Kitchen and the various books sort of competing against each other. Have you ever thought, or is there any possibility in the long term of getting some sort of at least an online listing of books that are out there with other recipes? Because I thought, well, my husband wanted to think when the online came out first that we'd be able to clear out the 3 bookshelves.
Sure.
But I had to inform him that no, they were not all out there, so we had to keep all the books and
Right.
continue buying them.
Very smart.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, like the tactile nature of it. But it is sometimes almost a little frustrating because I'm not quite sure what the best resource to go to is when I have all of them at my disposal.
Well, we're in the process of redesigning all of our websites, and that'll launch in the next year and a half to 2 years. So hopefully, in the end, the website will be the...
In the end. No, so we are looking to streamline everything, and believe you me, we would love an online index resource
And
as people who work there.
And that's the only thing that I'm looking for, because I know that they'll never be able, I don't know, to put all the recipes
Right.
online, but at least have an index of what's available so I know where else I can look, because I might need to buy another book.
Absolutely.
We
Hey,
hope so.
we'll definitely mention that.
Thanks.
So thank you so
Thanks,
much,
guys.
everyone. Really appreciate it. And we're going to be signing books as well.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.